Hello and welcome to my first YouTube video. I'm so excited to get going with you guys today. I have a fun, spooky build based on a real house that is still located in Pennsylvania. It is a pretty cool house. It was once the house of a prominent lawyer in the area. His name was F.W. Knox, and this is located in Coudersport, Potter County, Pennsylvania. So you can see it's this just very beautiful Victorian. It has all of this really fun gingerbreading. It's got this sort of cool Italian detailing in this tower, this nice square tower, which I think is very dramatic and fun. So that's one of the reasons why I picked this particular house to build. You can see in this photo here, this is about 10 years ago, that the house isn't in as good of shape as it was in the late 1800s, but I actually did a little bit of Googling and it looks like the new owners are working on fixing it up. So I'm hoping that the next time one of us gets to visit good old Coudersport that we'll see this cool tavern in real time. So you can see I'm just sort of working on building the main pieces of this house. I think one of the most difficult things about building this house was that I couldn't see the south side very much. I ended up having to sort of look at the house on Google Maps, and there was just a sort of sliver of the south side of the house that you could see. So I kind of go back and forth on whether that gable that's kind of facing us, that photo in the corner, actually continued on to the other side. And when I'm working on the roof, which I'll start to do here in just a few seconds, is I couldn't quite tell if it was going to go on the other side or not, and eventually I decided that it did. So that was one thing that I kind of struggled with as I was making this video. But I think one of the most fun things about this video was definitely making this tower. It's a very dramatic tower. It's got a lot of sort of prominence, and it's got a lot of elegance to it. So I think getting the proportion of the tower in comparison to the roof was one of the most important things for really kind of hitting this this build. And so I worked pretty hard on getting that to be correct. And the roof, man, I feel like I always struggle so much with roofs and The Sims 4, and I think I'm getting better. I don't know. I feel like it's taken me a long time to get to this place, and I've had to watch a lot of other people build. So I'm pretty happy with how this roof turned out, though. I feel like there's always room for improvement. I also feel like I always struggle with these little brackets. They seem like a very weird size to me. Like, I feel like they're way too big for most roof styles, but maybe I'm just not using them correctly. I feel like I had to do some resizing and I had to do some finagling to get them to look right, and so it kind of took me a long time to get that part finished, but it was such an important part of the build that I feel like it was really important to try to get that right. But I think I do eventually get those brackets right, so I feel pretty happy with how they turned out, and I am just kind of trying to work through more pieces of the roof here. I end up changing a lot of the windows. I like these windows. I feel like they sort of capture that cool sort of sun window that you get in this video, but I feel like it was a little bit difficult to really get what I was wanting to go for there because I feel like The Sims doesn't have a whole lot of like great gingerbready details when it comes to building Victorian style houses. Like you can see I was kind of messing around with these brackets a little bit to see if I could get them to look kind of like detailing around the cornice of that window there, but it just really didn't work out, and so I was kind of disappointed by that. I feel like there could be a lot of opportunity for more gingerbready pieces. So I hope that's in part of one of the updates, because I think the gingerbreading on these older houses is one of my favorite things to look at and one of my favorite things to build. So I hope that that's something that is a little bit easier in the future. But for now, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And you can see here I'm kind of working on the porch right now. I end up actually taking the railing off because there's no railing. You can kind of zoom in. I mean, you probably can't see it in this little corner photo right now, but if you zoom in on the original, you can see there's actually not any railing around that front porch, which isn't too uncommon for historic houses. There's not any, building code back in the day, and so people just kind of made porches and didn't really worry about falling off of them, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes there's railing like up the stairs or something, but there isn't always railing around the porches. It's definitely more of a modern thing. So I always found that kind of interesting. And so here I'm kind of working on these little pieces of architectural detail. You can see here that we're in Glimmerbrook Watch, but I actually decide to move it to another city kind of later in the build because I think this lot was just a little bit too small for the kind of house that I was going for, because I feel like the proportions are right on the house. There was just like it's like a 4x4, well, not quite 4x4, it's a little bit bigger on the tower, but I think if it was any smaller, it wouldn't look quite as right proportionally. So maybe I could have made it a little bit smaller, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with the proportions. So I think that eventually it makes sense. These little brackets, or these little like fun spires on the top of the house, are one of my favorite parts. You can see when you're looking at other historic photos of this house that the bracket or the spires aren't there, even in like 1920s, 1930s photos of the house. So it seems like they were removed pretty early on in the house's history, but they are in this really cool lithograph from the late 1800s, which is the little photo in the corner. And so I felt like they were important to include because they're a lot of fun and I really like them. See, look, we've got some fun gingerbready that can go on the top of the porches. I wish you could put that kind of gingerbreading on the gables. I feel like if you could put that around the gables, then it would really help kind of with that Victorian aesthetic. So this is my tip. This is my request, sim builders. Can I please put gingerbread around the gables? That's all I really want is gingerbread features. But here we're just kind of taking a peek at it. You can see I've kind of got some of these windows settled, but I then moved the house over to the vampire game. I actually did not own the vampire expansion before I started this build, and I felt like I needed some more Victorian pieces. I was like, well, there's some in the vampire expansion pack, and I was right. So I went ahead and downloaded it, and then I added some of the things that were in that pack. And I also changed these windows up at the top. I really like a lot of these very fun sort of magical windows that came in the like a wizard pack, but it just didn't seem to quite fit. It wasn't quite big enough, so it ended up being these like really fancy sort of churchy windows that I put up at the top. They're not quite the same because the windows in the original house are kind of just those double rounded windows. They're not the full arch that you see in the Sims version, but you do have that sort of like little double arch shape in these windows. So I was pretty happy with that. And I think the size is good, the proportion is good. So I feel like going any smaller on that would have been, it just doesn't quite look right. So you can see here I'm kind of messing around with the some little porches to see if I can get sort of gingerbready details, but it just doesn't really work out, which is kind of disappointing for me, but that's okay. I think in the end it really looks quite nice, and we could add a little bit more gingerbreading and it would look even better, but for now it looks pretty good. And you can see here, so now I've actually discovered that the that gable extends to the other side of the house, so I went ahead and fixed that and fixed the roof. I played around with some colors. If you look at some more modern photos of this house when they're trying to fix it up, they added a lot of cool paint colors, which I think are really pretty, but there's not really a lot of options for cool paint colors in The Sims if you want to do like multiple different colors on like different areas, and so it ended up just not working, and so I eventually turn it back to black so it's got more of a sort of monochromatic feel, but I do like the red. I think it's kind of fun, so maybe one day I'll have a little more color in my next Victorian, because I do think Victorian houses are very well suited to sort of dramatic and exciting colors. And then I do decide to change these windows a little bit. I kind of struggle with this roof part. Again, I feel like the roofs are the hardest part of these games for me sometimes, but I think it ended up looking pretty good. I went ahead and just went with, well, I can't remember what I went with now. Maybe one of the half roofs, but, oh, yeah, there we go. I've kind of finally got it figured out. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out, and I think this window looks a little better than those stacked windows from I think those are the like church windows from the Get Together expansion. So I think those windows are really cool, but I think they just didn't quite suit the feel that I was going for because these sort of like little window pockets are a very prominent detail on the house. So I think it's important to get those correct. And I'm adding some more gables here. I think I ended up changing the color of these gables like 4 or 5 times. So I wish that it had been a little bit easier to do that. And here I'm making them a little bit smaller. See, this is kind of what I was referencing earlier, that they kind of are weird colors, I think, or not weird colors, weird sizes for the roof. I don't know if maybe I'm just using them wrong or other people think this too, but I feel like sometimes the sizes of these are just so funky that I can't quite get it figured out. So I had to shrink them a little bit in order to get them to fit under that piece of the window. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, though I do change the color in a little bit here. And I also changed some of the windows. So I had, just the like church windows, but it wasn't quite the right size. And so I kind of go through a lot of different windows here just to see what I like. And I kind of end up, I love this. This is one of my favorite windows in the game. I just think it's so pretty. And I think it was enough to sort of add a little bit of like color and detail at the top of the house. I still wish we could have gingerbreading, which I've mentioned before now several times, but I feel like this really fancy, fun window. This is also from the Wizard expansion pack that, I accidentally had the window still on the inside of the house, so it was like building a wall around the window, which didn't work. But I do end up going with these windows here. I think I'd try another one over here just to see what it looks like. But I think it's really about the size and the scale of the windows. If you look at the photo, there's about 2 layers of windows, and they really take up a lot of space along the side of the building. So that seemed like a really important detail to try to get the hang of on this video. And so I finally get it, though I feel like I wish there was more. I wish they were a little bit fancier, maybe had a little bit of like a more gothic shape at the top, because it's very square. It's just sort of kind of a boring shape, kind of a boring size. But I think the sizing, I think at least the proportions are good, and I do think that the color scheme works well with the house, so at least that is going for it. So I'm happy with how it turned out, though. I certainly wish it could have been a little bit more detailed in that area. So this is the side of the house that I think was definitely the hardest to work on, and that is because I didn't really know what it looked like, so I kind of made up some stuff. I do know that it has this little gable here. You could kind of see just a little portion of it in the like Google Street View of this house, but I don't have any idea what's in this sort of far corner. And I kind of start with this little deck, but I actually change it to a conservatory later, and that's what I'm kind of working on right here, which I just think is so fun. It's such a fun detail. It feels very dramatic and Victorian, which I really like, so I'm happy with that. Here's me struggling with roofs again. Maybe I'm cut out all my roof struggles. But I think the conservatory was such a fun idea, so I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I'm really excited for you to see what the roof is, because I got to use one of these glass roofs, and I feel like I don't get an opportunity to use these very often. And this one is just so pretty. It's got so much detail, and I love the shape. It's very dramatic. It's got just this like really pretty black detailing on it. It went so well with these windows. It just like have this really cool conservatory on the back of the house, which I'm just really happy with how it turned out. This is probably one of my favorite rooms. And of course, you got to fill your conservatory with plants. So I went ahead and I'm going to make a second video. So this is part 1 of 2. And the second video is going to be about decorating the inside. So of course you know that I'm going to fill this conservatory with an absurd amount of plants. That's what this conservatory really deserves is lots of plants. So we'll see here in the next video. But for now, I think we're getting pretty close on sort of the final detailings of this house. I think you'll see me kind of sort through a lot of different color options, because I think I'm really trying to get settled on the color, and I do eventually turn away from the red, which I think was a good choice in the end, though I do wish there was probably a little bit more color in the final build. I changed these poor things. I changed them back again. I think they were white originally. I turned them to red, and then I'm like, no more red, and I go back. So those ended up changing color a lot. But I felt like the red was just a little bit too heavy. It looked a little bit I just didn't like it. So I went ahead and got rid of the red, which I think turned out pretty well. And just kind of working on some final details here. We've got the roof. Uh, since I downloaded the vampire pack halfway through, there was a lot more like cool spires and cool windows to choose from. So I went ahead and did a lot of that kind of editing as well, and just kind of fixing stuff up and getting the colors to be what I want them to be. I think this sort of like detail editing is where, oh, look at that shadow. Oh, it looks so nice. Man, I love the glass windows. It's so cool. I'm excited that I got to use them because I feel like I don't get to use them very often. But I feel like these sort of like final details are some of the most fun in the game. I feel like it's really exciting to get to the point where, your big idea is finally coming together and it's starting to look really nice. Oh, I think I added that railing back in. I must have, I think I took it off for a little while because there was no railing, but then I must have added it back on because it looks fun, so that's fine. Safety is good. We did say it was a remodeled Victorian, so I suppose that's a good thing to have is a railing. All right, but that's pretty much the whole video. I'm going to have a part 2, and we're going to do the landscaping and the interior decorating. So I'm really excited for you guys to join me in on that. There's going to be a ton of flowers. You can see I took this screenshot with the landscaping all finished, so you get a little preview. But there's lots of flowers, lots of fun little garden details, and I put a surprise in the backyard. So I hope to see you soon.